I'm having my one!
Hey, welcome to this new mini-series we're trying, where I do short reviews and hobby updates from my Shelf of Shame objectives of the year, aka Shelf Control. If you're not sure what that's all about, jump back to podcast episode 95 from January, where we talk all about our 2026 gaming objectives. But in one sentence, this is where each month of the year I take one game or thing from my gaming collection, often something that's been unplayed or not played for a while, and make sure it gets done that month. Now, it's currently March, and I've only just started doing this, so I'll probably try and catch up on what I got up to in January and February, but don't hold your breath on that one. Anyway, for the first of this series, we're having a look at Black Orchestra. Actually, just before we get started, I must apologise for all the video being in portrait mode. I'm an idiot. I'm sorry. I'll remember that next time. Right, that's enough intro. Onwards. So Black Orchestra is the game I chose to play in March. And this is a game from publisher Starling Games. It is 1 to 5 players, plays in about 90 minutes, and has the slightly unusual theme of the plot or plots to assassinate Adolf Hitler by various characters within the German elite. As it says on the box, it's based on real events, and in the game you're going to play as one, or if you're playing solo, then two of the potential assassins, including characters that you may be familiar with if you saw the Tom Cruise film Valkyrie, such as von Stauffenberg, Ludwig Beck, and General Obrecht. The board is a sort of map of some of the greater German Reich during the Second World War, and has point-to-point linked locations from across Germany and also specifically Berlin. And in the game, you can initially visit just the locations in Germany. But as the war continues and the German conquests ebb and flow, your access to other board spaces increases and then decreases. Each of the spots on the board has a hidden item token on it that when you're in that location you can reveal and then later collect. As well as the geographic locations that you can visit on the board. You also have markers for Hitler and his inner circle, and these will move around the board with events, but we'll come back and talk about that a bit later on. The game is played with each player taking their turn to complete a series of actions and then pull an event. The aim of this and the game overall is to collect plots, items and other cards that you can then bring together and attempt a plot against Hitler's life. You will have the chance during the game to potentially attempt multiple plots. In my game, I think there were 3 attempts, and I'll talk more about how these work a bit later. But back to your turn, you're moving around the board and taking cards, picking up items, and you can also take the Conspire action, which is arguably one of the more interesting mechanisms in the game. This Conspire action allows you to gamble 1 to 3 of your turn's actions, 3 in total overall, to gain more actions and other benefits at the risk of increasing the suspicion on you from the Nazi secret police, the Gestapo. The way this works is that you take up to 3 dice, and as a very quick aside, the components and production of this game are absolutely first-rate quality stuff. But anyway, so you roll the dice for each of the actions that you want to gamble, and for each red crosshair symbol that you get, you place a die on the track that gives you various benefits. For each black eagle symbol you roll, your suspicion on your character increases, and then for all the numbers you rolled, these are going to be 1, 2 or 3 on the dice, you add them up, and that is how many additional actions you can take. So obviously, often the best case here is you roll 3 dice and get 3 threes, and so 9 actions to take. It's a great little mini game within the bigger system where a gambled extra die costing you an action can turn out to be this really great thing, or actually even push you into a tricky situation as suspicion raises on your character. So that's really nice. If we take a look and talk about the character boards a bit, on your board you have 2 tracks that are really critical to your ability to complete assassination plots. The first is the motivation track, which represents your character's willingness to attempt plots. You start the game on Timid, where you're still enthralled to the regime, and this impacts your hand size for the dossier action, which is the taking cards. Then, as various triggers increase your motivation, you move to Skeptical, where your hand size increases, then to Motivated, where your character's special ability will trigger in, then Committed, at which level you can attempt some plots, and then you can increase all the way to Reckless, which is a requirement on certain, I guess, more risky plots. The second track is Suspicion, which is going to impact both your ability to successfully attempt plots, but also can cause you to be sent to prison when a Gestapo raid card is drawn as part of the event card draw at the end of your turn. So this is obviously another cool layer to the game where you are trying to keep your motivation high but your suspicion low. Really briefly on going to prison, it's not game ending, although it will effectively result in you missing a turn. To get out of jail, you're going to be looking at a random card draw from the top of what's called the interrogation deck, which gives you various options to escape, which you decide secretly, and the options presented will impact you and your fellow players to a greater or lesser extent. Another nice little feature of this game that adds a very thematic kind of sense of paranoia and suspicion. At the end of every player's turn, the game is moved forward by drawing from a deck of event cards. These are split across 7 decks, all representing a year of the war, I believe, and having historical events on them that will help or hinder what you're doing. And these are primarily moving characters or Hitler and his henchmen around the board, which can be helpful in fact that like several of the plots that you're going to attempt are dependent on the Hitler token being moved around the board to trigger them, but also pretty unhelpful in that can then teleport this token to the other side of the board or put one of your characters in a position of starting their next turn with one of those other characters from Hitler's inner circle that gives you some kind of penalty for that turn, which isn't great. The event deck also impacts another very important track on the board, which is the military support track. This is tracking the standing of Hitler with the German armed forces during the events of the war, but for gameplay purposes, it's directly impacting your plots. So to talk about plots, these are gained from the dossier action where you pick up cards from the deck, some of which are helpful in what you're doing in the game, maybe give you extra bonus things that you can do, but also a significant number of them are plots that you need to attempt to win the game. Each plot will be themed around a particular attempt on Hitler's life and will have some sort of criteria on it, like being the same space as Hitler, or the Hitler token must have just been moved, and then it will have a series of keywords on it as well. There can be a reference to your character type on there too, so what part of the regime you come from, civilian, Abwehr or Wehrmacht, for example, and also then list items that are specific to that plot. In attempting a plot, you roll 1 die plus 1 more for each of those keywords you can match through either the items that you've collected from around the board or from your character's job or background. So in the plot here, I had all the items and my character was from the Abwehr, which I think was a German intelligence service during the war. So I rolled 4 dice in total, 1 for the plot plus the 3 extra. When attempting a plot, what you're aiming with the dice is to roll equal or greater number of red symbols than the current level of the military support track and a smaller number of black eagles than your current suspicion level. So in our winning plane bomb plot, we rolled 3 crosshairs equaling the current military support, so we're successful. Important to say that I wanted to play the game through and succeed ahead of doing this review, so I did play it on easy mode. You can set it to a normal or hard difficulty level, which means that the military support starts higher and then can't fall below a certain level, which just makes life a bit tougher. Theme-wise, I think this is a really interesting one. It does appeal to me, as regular followers of our channel will know I am a bit of a history nerd. There is some good detail here, and I'll say that I don't know a massive amount about the history this game is trying to represent, but there are a few things that I think are slightly troubling about it. Firstly, the Holocaust, fairly widely recognised as the worst event in human history, carried out by one of the most evil regimes to ever exist. And in this game, it is only very lightly covered, which seems frankly very odd to me. there are areas on the board that represent concentration camp, extermination camps built by the Nazi regime that you can visit with your character and then increase the level of your motivation on that motivation track we were talking about. And I'll admit I did not look through every single event card, so maybe there's something I'm missing here, but I did think it was a slightly odd choice to have this cataclysmic event in human history as somewhat of a side note in what's going on here, and I'd love to know their thinking about that. Maybe that's just about the history and not much of a motivation for the people involved. I've slightly struggled to believe that. Anyway, another point is the way that the characters you're playing in the game are represented are also fairly unchallenged in this kind of heroic manner that they're even described on the box as. And again, I'll admit that the plot to assassinate Hitler is not an area of history that I know a lot about, but from what I do know, people like von Stauffenberg, Tom Cruise's character in the movie, may have sought to oust the Nazi regime, but he was a pretty unpleasant right-wing Prussian elite himself, so I think there's something else somewhat troubling with that as well. So, as you can tell, this sort of stuff is important to me, but putting that to one side for a moment, what do we think about the game? I think the designers have done a great job of creating a highly produced game of multi-layered, tense gameplay with a fascinating theme that appeals to me, albeit with some significant challenges that I've described. And I think, as always with these sorts of games, playing Germans as heroes during the Second World War could be troubling and off-putting to some, and I wouldn't criticise those people for it. The action economy works pretty well, but during the game I did find at several occasions I actually had more actions than I needed, so I ended up throwing away some of those, which is something I never like doing in these sorts of games. I'll sort of happily chalk that up to poor play on my part, but there were times in the game where I had an action to take, but none of those still available around me really made any sense to do. I think the best action economy games are those that make you always wish for one more turn, one more action, creating an agony of choice, and not always having that in this game does pull you out a little bit of that tension and the action a bit, I think. That said, I enjoyed my play of Black Orchestra. I'd give it a 6.5 out of 10. I appreciated having the opportunity to play it, but it will not be staying in my collection, as unfortunately it's just not quite good enough, all the right themes to get played regularly with my gaming group, so it has to go. If you have the opportunity to play this game, I think I'd encourage you to do so with the caveats that I've made through this review, but yeah, it's not a keeper for me. So there we go, that's been my review of Black Orchestra from Starling Games on this first episode of Shelf Control. So until the next one, I wish you happy gaming and good luck in tackling your own stack of unplayed games.
I'm having my one!